everyone. Welcome to Sketchbook Revival. It's Karen here with Shelley Klammer. Hi, Shelley.
Hi, Karen.
So wonderful to be here with you. I just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce myself. My name is Karen Abend, and I'm the host of Sketchbook Revival. And I'm an artist, and my big loves are illustration and design. And I'm also really interested in deepening and growing my own creative practice, which is what has given me the incentive and the enthusiasm for putting together this event. And I'm just so grateful to be able to share it with so many inspiring artists, such as Shelley, and to be able to gather here with you. I think so much magic can happen when we do these kinds of things in community. So if you're here for your very first Sketchbook Revival session, I just want to say welcome to you. So glad you're here, and offer a couple of tips for you and recommendations and encouragement, mainly to use this time to have fun, to be open to receiving all the fresh inspiration and new ideas that are available to you in this session, and maybe trying something new today for the very first time, being open to that. But most importantly, to create, because that's what this is all about, is your creative practice. Wherever you're at, it's all good. So enjoy. So I am so excited for today's session. I've been looking forward to it for such a long time. So I'm just so happy to finally be here with Shelley. Before we dive in, though, to her session, I would love to make sure that you have all the materials gathered that we're going to be using. She shared them on the materials list. And if you haven't had a chance to check that out, feel free to pause the video and do that now. I've already got my stuff together. I've got my giant sketchbook today because I just feel like I'm going to be needing the big one. I have a big one and a little one, but I got my big one. And I've got my felt markers, my colored ones. And she's also asked us to have our black ones of different sizes. So I've got a whole bunch of black ones, all different sizes. We'll see what we'll do with those. I've got my magazines. We'll need a couple to collage with, and my glue stick and my scissors, and even some crayons. And you can also use oil pastels, right? Mm-hmm. So excited to use these materials later on. So now that I have that out of the way, I would love to invite you to relax, sit back, and I'd like to properly introduce Shelley. Shelley is a counselor and an expressive arts educator with the International Expressive Arts Therapy Association. She supports people to authentically self-express, release emotional pain, and find inner calm through expressive arts and writing practices. Her e-courses can be found on our online school at expressiveartworkshop.com. Oh, Shelley, it's such a pleasure to be here with you.
I've been so excited about this, Karen. This is like so in my wheelhouse. This is like sort of, when you approached me about Sketchbook Revival, I thought, oh my gosh, can I ever talk about this? Because I love working in sketchbooks, and I have for 30 years. So super, super excited.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that is so inspiring. And of course, we want to know more about your creative practice and what that looks like and the benefits you've received from them. If you wouldn't mind starting off by sharing with us a little bit about that, we would love to hear.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about creative blockages, because I think a big part of this interview series, in just my take on it, is like, how do we maintain a practice, right? Like it's so I had to go back to where I was really blocked to think about what to bring to this, you know? And so when I was in my 20s, I was a gallery artist, and I had a sketchbook practice on the side. And it was kind of like, back then when I was in my 20s, I tried to make my art all joyful, all positive, all pretty, all colorful, you know, that kind of thing. And so the sketchbook practice I had was around this sort of intention to feel joy. So I collected quotes, and that was the early days of my collage, you know, process. And so I would cut out beautiful patterns and colors and images, and very, very simple back then, though, very, very rudimentary. I was just getting started, but everything was just, I had kind of a rule around it, you know. And it's interesting because I've been thinking about creative practices and how they need a structure, or I don't like the word rule, but rules, but basically some kind of I'm going to do this every day, and I'm going to show up, and basically until the sketchbook is done, or the number of drawings are done, or, you know, that's kind of how it gets set up, a practice. And so I just couldn't get back to my joy books very often. And it was because I was struggling with a lot of blockages to joy. So I wanted to share my breakthrough journal, which happened in my 30s after I went through a big crisis. I decided to change my life. I had actually been making a lot of bad choices in my 20s, and then I was really feeling the repercussions. And so when I turned 30, I did a huge turnaround where I had this vision of this whole new sort of fresh creative life that I wanted to lead. And I had a lot of emotional stuff. I had a lot of just repercussions from the choices I had made when I was younger and how they affected other people. And so I started this journal, and it was so simple. It was ballpoint pen drawings. I don't know if you can see that, but they were very elaborate. I would work on them for hours and hours and hours a day. So back then my practice was literally hours a day. I was working through a lot of heavy emotional material. But I want to share that this was my breakthrough journal into being very consistent with a regular creative practice, because what I found was that, yeah, it's kind of funny. I call this journal my accountability journal, you know, where I was doing all kinds of like sort of darkness processing. And so this one says, you know, I keep my longing secret, pushed down and closed. My mind becomes muddled and weak. And I think a lot of the bad choices that I made in my 20s were just being very dependent on, you know, sort of people that didn't have good character, and also just very weak in my own self. So I became really clean in these journals. I became very accountable. I really started to look at myself, and I started to notice this really cool pattern that whenever I became really, really super clean, my higher self would come through much stronger. So this one I'm going to show you next. It says, light is coming into a very impoverished sense of myself. Generations of feeling unloved, unseen, unheard, and not understood. And so here's one of my darkness drawings, and I started to discover that I had lots of really like almost like impoverished or even dying aspects of myself that had never been recognized, never been loved, never lived, you know. So I did a lot of shadow work in my accountability journals, and it's always so fun to flip through them, because what happens is, what I notice is the pattern is I'll do a very deep period of accountability, sometimes one, sometimes 2 or 3 drawings, and then my higher self comes in. And so this next drawing says, I am an artist, intensely listening and seeing a higher creative intelligence. So what I started to notice was this alternation pattern where the dark needed to be expressed before the light could come in. So now I know, and I've known since that time, since I was like, this is like 15, 20 years ago now, that if I'm blocked, I need to work through some darkness. And so this is how I chose to do it. And so the structure of this practice was just fill a whole sketchbook, only, as you can see, black and white, using a ballpoint pen. And the reason I chose the ballpoint pen was because I needed something that was very quick and fast and furious and very, very expressive. And so that is why I chose that medium. And so all of my creative practices are really like a very deep immersion into the expressive arts process, you know, where I will choose some structures around it that really have me either deeply exploring a modality, a medium, or a method of some kind of expressive art in my sketchbook. So in contrast to that, this is now 15, 20 years later, and I want to share what I'm doing now and how my creative practice looks now. So I'm doing 2 really, really long creative practices. One was intentional and one was kind of a surprise. So I have decided to do a 365 mandala practice. And, you know, this has been interesting to me. The consecration to this practice is I want to learn how to create emotional calm. I'm coming out of a lifetime of sort of worrying and fretting, and I thought, when I was doing my art studio work with people, my therapeutic work, I saw that when they were, you know, and we know this by the coloring craze, but when they were sitting very quietly doing very detailed work, there was a calmness that came over them that was very palpable. And so I've done over 200 of these so far, and It's really been interesting for me because in a sense, I've never done such a long practice. Usually I fill one sketchbook and then I change methods and modalities. I'm on my 5th sketchbook now.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the first 200 or so were really like this, just intuitive drawings, coloring, just practicing calm, being very much in the moment, very present. And they've really helped me to calm my nervous system a lot. I do them every morning for about just I don't finish a whole mandala. I might draw for 15 minutes or color for 30 minutes, but no more than 30 minutes on the weekdays because I work full time as a therapist during the week. And then on the weekends, I might do a little bit more. But, it was funny because I wanted to share that I hit over 200 mandalas and I thought, God, I don't know if I'm going to make it till the end. This is getting kind of boring because I've never done a long practice. And so I wanted to share my new mandala journal with you because I had to switch mediums. So the only structure that I have for this practice is that I do something within a circle. I haven't limited like the ballpoint pen drawings. I haven't limited the medium that I'm going to use. So I got bored, and so I have done some collaging, and this one is what I'm starting now is watercolor painting intuitively. And then drawing on top of the watercolor painting. And so as you can see, it's getting more intuitive, more free flow. And there's just kind of a mystery that's coming into my process that I would have never discovered had I not done such a long creative practice, So the boredom really actually ended up inciting this new discovery that, wow, is this ever mysterious? Is this ever fun to do this free-form color and see what I see in it, almost like a projective technique, So that is my intentional practice. And then it was funny because over Christmas time we were snowed in with family. We couldn't get back on the road. The highway was was closed, and so after Christmas I went and I bought a whole bunch of small journals at Michael's, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do another 365 practice. Crazy me, like when do I have time for that? But anyway, I went to the secondhand bookstore and I bought a bunch of old magazines and old books and things while I was away, and I started to do these little abbreviated collages. And,
oh, wow.
Just cutting out colors and patterns. And I wanted to share this with you because it ties back to the story of when I was in my 20s and I was trying to feel joy, but I was blocked because I had all this emotional material. And I think this is a beautiful example of the fruits of, emotional work where I'm not trying to be positive. These are just coming through. The affirmative words are there, and I'm actually writing affirmative poetry to go with each spread. So this is my secondary 365 practice, and I won't get it done prior to the mandalas. They're my priority, but this is really when, because I do a lot of shadow work with people, as you can see from my, I have multitudes of shadow journals. I know that space well. So this is kind of like the fun respite that I have from that. I love shadow work, but this is just almost like the antidote or the clearing that I mostly do these on the weekends, and I'll sit down and do a couple. And like I say, this is a slow go on the weekends, but it just, when I really feel like I need to lighten up, this is what I do. So that's my current 2 creative practices, and also my past creative practice, just to show all of us that, doing dark, shadowy kinds of journals aren't a terrible thing. They don't mean anything bad. And what the wonderful thing that I found about those shadow journals is that the alternation just kept coming in again and again. And I started to trust that dance of the dark and the light, that as soon as we love something dark, then the light comes in so much stronger. So that was, very encouraging.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh my goodness, Shelley. That was so inspiring to see that progression and, where you've been, where you were and where you've come, and all those variations of how to show up in a sketchbook practice and how it can really help us heal and create and feel joy. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh,
so I know you have I know you have some things that you want to share with us with our art materials. Do you think this is a good time to do that?
Yeah, I want to just start by saying that I'm not an art therapist. I'm primarily a talk therapist. So the art modalities that I bring into my sessions, and not all, I don't always bring art into my sessions. It just depends on who I'm working with. But sometimes I do, but it's different than art therapy. So art therapy, I know this because I have quite a few friends who are art therapists. Typically what you would do in an art therapy session is the person coming in for therapy would draw or paint for quite a long time, like almost the entire session, and then the therapist would hold space for that to happen, and then there would be a bit of talking at the end of the session. And what I do as a talk therapist is I invite people to do a creative practice outside of session, always, like either journal writing or if, some kind of an art practice, and to either email it to me if we're working online or bring it into the session, and we'll talk about how it ties into their life, the themes of their life. So the art directives that I do, because sometimes people want to do art with me online, and I'm going to do a session with you like I would do with someone online, because we do this sometimes. But so it's almost what I call, what's the best way to say it? It's like a visual dialogue where we're each going to create art, the same art directive together, and then we're going to have a conversation about what we've created. And so it facilitates a deeper conversation, obviously, but there is a bit of talking involved. So I don't know if we will get to them all, but I've got 5 very quick art directives, which we'll do together. And then we'll have a little conversation about what we've created. And all of the art directives that I've chosen, they all could be a creative practice. So, keep in mind as we're doing each one that each directive could be the same thing that you do every day, how you could show up every day in a sketchbook for 30 days or an entire sketchbook. And this is how I myself have gone very, very deeply into the expressive arts and learned a lot about, on a personal level, about expressing myself in different creative ways. So every one that we're going to do today can be very, very deeply explored. And I always like to say with a creative practice, I wonder who I'll be on the other side of that 30 drawings or that sketchbook, So it's really fun. There's different purposes to everything I'm going to offer today. And this is going to be therapeutic, but Karen, we won't go too deep. So don't worry about, bearing all or anything, because this is just a demo. And I want to encourage people that, if you do this in a private sketchbook, you can go really deep. You can go real negative if you want to. But today we'll keep it, just, be as brave as you want. But, whatever. If you feel like if you see an image or something and you think, oh, I can't share that online, then certainly move on, right? Okay, so the first thing that I usually do with people in a creative session is, I'm going to turn my camera down so we can see. So we're going to start with the very, very simplest of collages, okay? So I'm in a real happy place in my life, so I love really beautiful visual magazines. I subscribe to Elle Decor. Just because it's got lots of gorgeous images in it, and that's where I am. But when I was doing a lot of really deep emotional processing, National Geographic, it has a lot of dark stuff in it, but sometimes you need dark stuff when you're processing heavy emotional material. But for this check-in exercise, Karen, I'm just going to invite you to flip through your magazine and choose one image and one word. And what we're looking for in emotional, sort of the processing form of collage, is to pick a word or an image that feels the most emotionally strong, positive or negative, okay? So it's not like intentional collage, like a vision board where A lot of people ask me about that, where you're always just looking for positive things. You just like something will stand out to your awareness that feels really super strong, and it would be a phrase and a word and an image. And so I just invite you to just cut out the image, cut out the word, and then just glue it together in some way in your sketchbook.
Does it matter which one you pick first?
No, not at all. Just whatever catches your mind, your emotions and your imagination. I can just get so crazy when I see things in a magazine. I want to cut everything out, but there's usually something that stands out really, really, really strong. Now, if you were to do this practice every day, this is like an emotional check-in. So this is the first start, the very beginning of like emotional awareness. So this is great practice for people who aren't really clear on what they're feeling. And so this gives the feeling a color, an image, and a word. And if you were to do this every day for 30 days, how you might end up at the end of that 30 days would be more aware of your emotions. And that's the first step to emotional healing, is to, start to form a deeper, richer relationship with your emotions. And what better way is there to do that than working with sound imagery and words that you possibly wouldn't have thought of yourself? And that's what I love about finding words in magazines, because we can think of words and that's really intuitive and wonderful. But okay, I'm done already. No rush though.
I'm almost done. Give me a few more minutes, or a few more seconds, I should say.
Yeah, so this is a wonderful conversation starter. And so for facilitators who are watching us, art facilitators, I have a lot of art facilitators and the people that I connect with. This is a wonderful way to even start a workshop where everybody gets a chance to check in, and it deepens the space, Wonderful.
Yeah.
Spiritual. Okay, I am actually gonna flip my camera up, and then I thought we could, this means to us just briefly. In a therapy session, we would talk a lot more. Would you like to go first, or shall I?
I can go first, sure.
Yeah, do. Just tell me how you feel about it. Does it spark anything for you as to what's going on for you right now in your life, the image and the word that you've chosen?
Okay, sure. Okay. So I'll just hold up my image, and I have, the word spiritual and this like illuminated woman. It seemed perfect. I think, I have my relationship with spirituality is sometimes ambiguous and sometimes not, but I know I'm spiritual, but I don't necessarily know what that means all the time. But I think right now I'm just working really hard and trusting that, everything's okay. So just like having that trust that even if I don't know exactly what's going on sometimes, that everything's okay, and just believing in something greater than myself. I think that's sort of encouragement for that, I think, is what this is.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I hear encouragement, and I want to share that, spontaneous art is often encouraging. Sometimes we get so caught in our cognitive, loops around, oh, this is scary or this is hard. And whenever we create a window into spontaneity, oftentimes the spiritual does intersect, or the creative, which I think is the same, it comes in and it offers us this very surprising kind of encouragement. Did you feel a little bit surprised by what you found? Yeah.
Yes, I did feel surprised. Yeah, I definitely wasn't looking for this.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the aim of this. And so if anyone was to choose to do this as a creative practice for, say, 30 days or an entire sketchbook, what's happening here is spontaneous art it kind of brings what's on the edge of our awareness into our conscious mind. So in a way, it brings the intuitive forward so that we can actually see it. So it's really interesting to be able to sense a little deeper, and this is why it's often purported that, you know, art is deeper than words or imagery, and you know, spontaneous art is much deeper. It just reaches into a deeper part of the mind that thinks in pictures first before it thinks in words and before it comes into cognition. So that's kind of the goal of this practice. And I'll share what I found, which is surprising to me too. And it says think pink. And for me, what this means is I'm moving into a whole new level of femininity in my life. It's something that I kind of denied in myself, even though I am a very feminine woman. For many years, I worked very, very hard, like almost, you know, very masculinely and drivenly. And I'm coming to a much softer, quieter, more restful kind of, I don't know, just receptive place in my life. So that was surprising for me too, but not surprising, even though, you know, because I know that's what's coming. So for me, this little collage feels like an affirmation, you know, to what's kind of coming in on the edge and is starting to get established in my life. So there we go. That's exercise 1. Boom. All right. So the next exercise is I want you to pick one of your black pens, maybe a thicker black pen. And this is, we're just going to do a simple spontaneous drawing starter. So, I mean, as you can see, or could see rather, in my very scribbly, yet very sophisticated as they became over time, black and white drawings from when I was in my 30s, when I was processing all of that emotional pain. It's really hard for people to kind of get straight to that place, and I had to develop it. And sometimes it starts with a little bit of scribbling. And so Scribble Drawing, a Scribble Starter, is a very classic art therapy directive where you draw a loose, and I want to encourage like a big, loose, lyrical kind of a scribble, nothing really too dense, in that we're going to try to see something in it. So this is a projective technique. So go ahead and just draw a very loose scribble. And it doesn't have to be much, because it gets harder to see things when it gets too dense. And then very, very simply, after your scribble is done, the next step is to turn it around all 4 ways to see what you can see in it. And this is like a cloud gazing exercise where, you know, you're looking and you're trying to see what your subconscious or your unconscious mind is seeing. I'm already seeing something in mine. And you just keep turning it until you feel like, that's what I want. And then, Karen, we're just going to quickly develop our scribble and then write a few words at the end. And so just develop your scribble. You know, if you had more time and you were doing this as a creative practice, you might really, you know, do a lot of time, spend a lot of time patterning and coloring. But we're going to do something just very simple right now, just as a demo. And so you darken the lines that feel significant to you, and leave the other lines that don't seem to matter with the shape that you're seeing. And so again, you could do this for 30 days or fill an entire sketchbook with this kind of thing. And what we're trying to do with the spontaneous art process is we're just trying to invite surprise. We want to find out stuff that we don't already know about ourselves through this. How are you doing there, Karen? You need more time?
No, I think I'm actually pretty good.
Okay, so what I invite you to do now is you don't have to write a poem, but just free associate and any words that come to mind. It could be one word, it could be 3 words, it could be a couple of lines. But when you look at this picture that you have drawn, a few words might come to mind. And then just I invite you to write them down or the word down on your drawing. And then when you're ready, we can do a little sharing. I find that these things that come from the subconscious and unconscious mind to be so precious. Like I just love that sense of surprise that I get when I create spontaneously. Such a joy. Okay, I'm going to put my camera up.
You want to go first this time?
I do, sure. All right, so when I turned my drawing around, I immediately saw, you know, this figure sort of looking in on itself. And the words that came were self-examination and accountability. And I thought, well, no surprise. I'm sharing my accountability journals today. And I'm also at a new layer of accountability where I'm really looking at myself and oh my goodness, I'm really looking at myself as a mother. I have a 22-year-old daughter, and I'm really deeply looking back right now in a very, very profoundly accountable, deeply self-examining way, you know. And so I think that's what this drawing is representing for me today, if I was just to take a good guess at it. And sometimes it's a good guess because I might look at this drawing, you know, 30 days from now and I think, oh no, it's about that. But that's my guess today. And that's just what I'm feeling is that I'm just like going to this whole new level of sort of purity about my part in things. And it feels so good, you know, it's just a real coming clean process, which is really cool because you know, I was digging through my many boxes of journals last night. And I thought, no, I'm going to share my accountability journals with Karen. So it's fun that that's coming up today.
And it's very whimsical. I think I love how you're looking at your feet. It's very humorous, I think, in a good way.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's see yours.
Okay, so this is mine. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
So mine is, okay, yeah, so I have the words, a lot of words came up for me. I feel like I could have written a lot more about this, but I got because this direct gaze was really part of the message, like direct, see, focus, intention, like really, focusing my intention on things, you know, where I'm going. I'm sure this workshop has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And then down here, there's the arms are like reaching and embracing, and this is more like holding tight, embracing love. And I'm also a mother, so I think, you know, my son comes to mind, my husband and my family. Like, I've been very busy recently, so the desire to embrace them more, looking forward to more space so I can, you know, remember that that's also my priority, you know. So I think that's what the message is. I was definitely, surprised by it, and it was like, wow, that's so cool.
Oh, beautiful. And like I said, you know, even with mine and with all spontaneous art, when I first started, I didn't know what by spontaneous art meant. until 6 months to a year after I had finished it. So, you know, we're just guessing right now, and people who are just starting to create expressively, spontaneously, intuitively, like we can make a good guess as to what we're doing and what it means to us today. But if you were to do a series of these scribble drawings over a period of time, it would get richer and fuller, and you can see how you can deeply immerse yourself in the process, and then you start to get this much fuller picture about what intention means and a much fuller sense about what love and holding is for you. So, you know, it just gets richer over time right now because these spontaneous drawings are coming in kind of from the edge of our awareness into our conscious mind. We can't quite be sure, you know, so we can leave that open to interpretation too, right? All right, so I'm going to share another exercise that I love to share, and this is inspired by an artist named Heather Williams, and she has a wonderful drawing book out there, and one of her exercises is an inner child drawing. So inner child drawings are very quick to do, and they're always done with the non-dominant hand, and so my non-dominant is my left, yours might be different. And so we're going to take, again, another dark marker, something that we can see. You know, we'll just do a monochromatic drawing here for time's sake, but I did do an entire inner child journal in this way that I'm going to share, and I got really into you know, coloring and patterning, and it was very reminiscent of how I actually did draw as a child. I drew a lot of stripes and polka dots and things, and so I spent a lot of time drawing with my non-dominant hand in color. So if somebody was to do this as a creative practice, it can be, of course, a lot more colorful than this. But what it involves is just to draw a child, just to draw a child figure, because we all have many inner children inside of us. We have different inner teens inside of us. We have different aspects of self that some may be stuck or frozen back in time, or some might be aspects of our soul that are kind of childlike. And so we have this whole host of characters that we can explore through non-dominant hand figure drawing. So I ask you to just create the form of a child with your non-dominant hand, and then I have a few questions that we're going to ask the drawing when we're done, okay? So I'll just bring this down here. Let's see if I can see. There we go. And so this is kind of fun because it just takes away all that control that as kind of accomplished artists as some of us are, can't have with our other It's interesting how quiet my mind will go when I'm doing this non-dominant kind of drawings, that might go much deeper into my intuition, and so talking becomes harder. It's amazing how many different inner children we can draw. We don't really know how much we have inside sometimes. And they're always surprising because they're coming from the other hand. So there's absolutely almost no control. I can feel my inner child wishing that I had time to color this. When you're done, Karen, the next part of the process is I'm going to get us both to write down 3 questions with our dominant hand. So this is the adult part of ourselves asking the inner child part of ourselves 3 questions. So when you're ready, I'll read out the questions and you can write them down.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so the first question is, what is your name? And you would do this on every drawing if you were to do a series. And then leave room for an answer. And the second question is, how do you feel? And the third question is, what can I do, it's kind of a long question, to help you feel really good? So now when we answer the questions, we're going to answer them in our inner child hand, which is the non-dominant hand. And so she would have much different answers than the dominant hand. So we're just going to write the answers to the 3 questions and then have another share, okay?
Yes, with our non-dominant hand, correct?
Yes, yes. So the name can just be anything.
Okay.
And I find that my inner child can't spell. It's funny. I'm a really good speller. Very hard to write. The non-dominant hand. I can hardly read it. Keep telling the truth. That's what. Okay. Okay. So when you're, I'm going to flip my camera up. And a few minutes of quiet while you answer. Are you done? Yeah.
Yep.
Would you like to share first, or shall I?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I don't mind either way. Whatever.
Yeah.
I can
Your
share.
turn.
I'm happy to share.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. So this is my inner child. I'm not going to say that I like the way she looks, but I know that's not the point. But her name is Alice. She feels playful, and she would like me to play with her.
Ah, lovely. After all the work of putting this together, you probably need some playtime. Such a big job putting something like this together. Oh, we're all so lucky. That's great. Okay, so this is mine. And I thought it was really interesting that the foot is way up at the head again. That just happened. And so what is your name? She says her name is Penelope Starship. And I think you can get quite creative names, right, with the inner child. How do you feel? And she says excited. And what can I do to help you feel really good? And she says keep telling the truth, which is what's happening for me right now. I'm coming to a new level of truth in my life, especially around my mothering. So this is really exciting for me, and it's a very, a real affirmation, right? All right, so are you ready for, are you ready for another? Or do you want to, like, how are we doing? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think we should do another.
Should we do one more and just leave the lot?
Let's do one more, yeah.
Let's do one more, okay. Now, we did a general emotional check-in at the beginning, and that's just tell me anything about how I feel, and it can be cognitive, emotional, so from the soul. It's just very, very general with the image and the word. That was the emotional check-in we did first. And sometimes I like to do a more specific emotional check-in, and this can be done over a period of time with areas in your body that you have a specific challenge with. So if you have a particular area of pain, you can do an emotional check-in in that area of your body every day if you want to, and just watch it shift and change. Now for me, my heart is a curious instrument. It opens hugely, it hurts, it does all kinds of things. And so I like to do a regular heart check-in. So I'm just going to invite us to both do a heart check-in. It's very simple. Our heart is where we store all the emotions, and I'll just show you one of my regular ones just as an example. So we're simply just going to draw a heart, and we're going to use crayons or pastels because they're easy to fill in, and this will be sort of like a real spontaneous use of color and line. However, you know, it doesn't have to look like this at all, obviously. And then we're going to go into our magazine and we're going to pick one word and we're going to put it on the heart, and that's the exercise. Okay, so we're going to start with drawing the heart and using color as an emotional form of expression, which is quite wordless. And then to anchor it in the cognitive, we are going to then find a word to just give it a little bit of cognitive connection. So this is just kind of spontaneously, you know, making marks, choosing whatever colors feel emotionally strong. And you can see how I'm a real big proponent of anyone can do a creative practice, and all of the ones that we've done today take literally 5 to 10 minutes. And so really, you know, it doesn't have to be a really elaborate thing. And if it is elaborate, you can just set a time limit on it. Like I'm just going to do 15 minutes a day. It's interesting. It's like when you're choosing colors, it's often the colors that sort of pop out to your awareness with the spontaneous art. So some color will feel just like the imagery and the words that we spontaneously choose. Some colors will stand out and other colors will not. And it's really important in spontaneous art to be okay with choosing colors that you think are ugly or that you might not really normally choose if you were doing pretty art. And that's because there's obviously an aspect that wants to emotionally express itself and come into the light, come out of the darkness into the light. Okay, so I'm done my coloring process. I am going to look for a word now in my magazine. I just found it already. Boom. And once you find your word, you can glue it on your drawing. And what I find actually with the magazine on top of the pastels or the crayons is you might have to go back in and put some white glue on it. But for now, I'm just going to tack it on with a glue stick. How are you doing, Karen?
I'm doing good. I'm not sure I found my word.
You find your word and I'll just chat for a minute because I wanted to say something about spontaneous art. I think, you know, it really needs to feel good, and whether it's dark or light, we know that we're being honest and coherent and in alignment with how we feel. If it feels good, and it doesn't need to be light all the time to feel good. It just needs to be honest. So when we feel honest, we feel good. There's some sense of kind of a rightness to it, you know. Are you ready?
Yes, I found my word.
Yay! Okay, so I'll share mine first. So I found myself doing lots of swirls and in the heart. And one thing I noticed was I don't like this green, this putrid green kind of color. That color often comes up for me when I'm struggling with an infection in my body, or you know, something that doesn't just feel quite right. And so that makes sense to me. I am ever struggling and striving, and sometimes very easily opening my heart. So I love the words I found. They'll probably be very hard to see, but it says play it, play your heart like an instrument, open it up and play it. That's what it means to me today. It might change meaning over time, but that's my heart check-in today. That's what my heart is communicating to me today. So I would love to see yours.
So this is mine. I used crayons that aren't very vibrant, but I like the colors anyway. But yeah, my word is love. I found love, and I'm like, oh, that's it. So it's pretty straightforward, just like give it, receive it.
Give it, receive it. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. And I find this exercise really does things for my heart. It's like the heart loves, in my experience, to be listened to. And when we give it words and colors and check in with it regularly, it gets quite eloquent in its expression. I mean, it's a very, very beautiful part of our body, a very beautiful, intelligent organ. So it's, yeah, that's one of my favorite creative exercises, which I was so thrilled to share with you today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing all these. I could go on and on with these. They're so fun, and I love how easy they are, and just how much they offer us in different ways. Thank you, Shelley. So I wondered if you wouldn't mind just sharing real quick if you have like a number one tip to help people like stick with their practice. Like, okay, let's say they fell in love with one of these and they want to start it. What can help them keep going if they encounter a rough spot?
Right. You know, what's really come through very strong for me as we're talking and talking about, you know, finishing practice is really like a series of something. And I think sometimes when we just think, oh, I've got to get to 30 drawings or the end of my sketchbook, we stop immersing ourselves into the process of what's actually happening. So I think it's helpful to think of a creative practice or a sketchbook practice as a form of spiritual practice, as a form of meditation, where we are just going to take some time to spend some time being present to our feelings, to being present to the art materials, to the act of using the art materials. So it's very sacred. It's very special. And I've really come to know this place very deeply with my mandala practice because I've been taking it into a spiritual form. But looking back, I can see that even those really dark days when I was doing those drawings, you know, those ballpoint pen drawings, processing all my heavy emotions, I was just as present back then. I was just as fully engaged. And so that really needs to be the intention, I think, going into a practice, is that it's not the end game or the end goal, which we're so trained to focus on. Oh, when am I going to get to this goal? When am I going to get to this amount of money I'm going to make? When am I going to get to, you know, this level of career, or whatever goals we set for ourselves? So, you know, in a sense, a creative practice, even though there are structures and parameters, and there's an end game when you're going to be finished when the sketchbook is done, or the 365 mandalas are done, what have you. In the middle, there's just practicing the process, practicing the process, practicing the process. And this is how we deepen into learning how to get very eloquent with art materials, learning how to get very good at drawing. It's just, we're just going to practice the process for whatever structure we set, whether it be 15 minutes a day, or 30 minutes a day, a page a day. Yeah, it's just focus on the process and enjoy it.
Thank you for sharing those insights with us. I love everything that you said, and I just, yeah, tucking that into my wonderful growing toolbox of tips from all these amazing artists who we've been gathering with. So thank you. So I know you have a wonderful free gift to share with everybody. Would you like to tell us more about that?
Yes, I have. I think I have pretty much the most perfect gift for this interview series is that I actually have a free course. It's a webinar, which is a walk through my sketchbooks through the years. So it's a photographic walk through my sketchbooks, and it actually describes the process of starting those very simple wishing I could feel joy journals when I was in my 20s, and I share some examples of what they looked like, very simple and just beginning as an artist, and then moving into the heavier emotional processing, and then some real cool examples of being really quite surprised along the way of all the, higher self kind of insights that came through my emotional processing. And in the last, it's a 3-part series, and at the end, I share kind of a process for getting emotions out of your body through drawing, and how to work with positive psychology in the end to sort of implant and practice new healthy beliefs and feelings, just the kind of process that I went through in my own emotional healing. So I just share my journey in that course. So everyone's welcome to partake of that.
Oh, good. Thank you so much for this wonderful gift. So click on the link below the video to access that and join Shelley's community. That sounds amazing, and I cannot wait to get it myself. So thank you. I'm just such a fan of everything that you do, and it was such an honor to share this space with you. So thank you so much, Shelley.
Bye, Karen. I loved it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
ExpressiveArtWorkshops.com